My sister-in-law, Chloe, loved to perform. Her favorite stage was any family gathering where she could hold court, and her favorite character was the successful, ambitious career woman. In her narrative, I was cast as the supporting role, the quiet, simple-minded wife with no ambition. She loved to point out my quaint life in front of everyone, patting my hand with a pitying smile. She had absolutely no idea that her next promotion, her team's budget, her entire future at the company she was so proud of, rested in the hands of the very woman she was so publicly mocking. She thought I was nobody. She was about to find out I was her new CEO. The stage for today's performance was my mother-in-law's 60th birthday party. The backyard was a beautiful sea of pastel balloons and fragrant flower arrangements. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and the smoky promise of the grill, where my father-in-law was happily stationed. Dozens of relatives milled about, aunts, uncles, and cousins I saw only a few times a year, their polite chatter creating a gentle humming backdrop to the afternoon. It was, by all accounts, a perfect family scene. But in our family, like many others, there are unspoken currents, and the strongest one always flowed directly from my sister-in-law, Chloe. I was content in the quiet eddies, helping my mother-in-law, Martha, carry trays of food from the kitchen and listening to my husband's Uncle Robert tell a long, meandering story about his prize-winning roses. My husband, Mark, was never far. He'd catch my eye from across the lawn and give me a small, reassuring smile. He knew these events were a minefield for me. He knew how much I preferred our quiet life over the performative nature of his family's get-togethers. He loved me for my calm, my steadiness, and he did his best to shield me from the family's resident storm. But you can't shield someone from a hurricane. Chloe made her entrance an hour after the party had started, ensuring maximum impact. She strolled through the side gate like a celebrity on a red carpet, dressed in a sharp designer dress that was wildly inappropriate for a casual backyard barbecue. Her laugh was loud, designed to make heads turn, and they did. The center of gravity in the yard shifted immediately towards her. "Oh my God, I am so sorry I'm late," she announced to no one and everyone. "You would not believe the day I've had. We're in the middle of this massive merger at Innovate Solutions, and my team is leading the charge on the rebranding strategy. My boss basically said the entire Q4 launch rests on my shoulders. It's just insane." I watched as my aunts and cousins gathered around her, their eyes wide with admiration. Mark sighed softly beside me. "Here we go," he murmured, for my ears only. For the next hour, Chloe held her audience captive. She told exaggerated tales of boardroom battles, of her genius marketing campaigns, of the immense pressure she was under. She was the hero of every story. It was during a lull in her monologue that her eyes, like a hawk spotting a field mouse, landed on me. I was sitting with Mark, quietly enjoying a slice of birthday cake. A wicked, familiar glint appeared in her eye. She was ready for her next act, and she needed a supporting character to play the fool. She sashayed over to our table, a crowd of relatives trailing in her wake like pilot fish. "Anna, there you are. I feel like I've barely seen you," she cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We've been here since noon, Chloe," Mark said flatly. She ignored him, her focus entirely on me. "I was just telling everyone about the madness at Innovate. It's a completely different world. You're so lucky you don't have to deal with that kind of stress." She leaned in, placing a hand on my shoulder. "So tell us, what have you been up to? Still tinkering with those little projects of yours? It's so wonderful you have hobbies to keep you busy." The relative smiled lightly, oblivious to the venom laced in her words. Tinkering was what she called the consulting work I did for a few select tech startups. Hobbies was her word for the quiet, intense passion that had consumed my life for the past decade. I just smiled back. Something like that. My simple, non-committal answer was the opening she was waiting for. She straightened up, addressing the crowd again. I mean, it's just so important to have balance. I'm out there, in the trenches, shaping the future of global tech. It's high stakes, high pressure, 24/7. And then I see Anna, and she's so calm and content with her life, and it's just a wonderful reminder that not everyone is built for that kind of ambition. She turned back to me, her smile now full of pity. Honestly, Anna, it's a gift. Mark is so incredibly lucky to have a wife who is happy to focus on the simpler things, the home, the garden, all of it. While the rest of us are out here battling it out in the corporate world, it's a comfort to know someone is keeping the home fires burning. Someone has to, right? The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. It was a masterpiece of public humiliation, delivered with a smile. She had painted me as a simple, ambitionless housewife, a relic from another era, and herself as a titan of modern industry. I saw the pity in my Aunt Carol's eyes. I saw the flicker of embarrassment on a cousin's face, and I saw the muscles in Mark's jaw tighten as he prepared to leap to my defense. Before he could speak, I placed a calming hand on his arm. I looked at Chloe, at her triumphant, smiling face, and I felt nothing. The years of her small cuts and digs had finally cauterized the wound. There was no pain, no anger. There was only a quiet, cold clarity. She had just drawn a line in the sand, and I knew with absolute certainty that she had no idea on which side of it she truly stood. The future of tech at Innovate Solutions, her future, was a topic I knew a great deal more about than she could possibly imagine, and her performance today had just sealed her fate. I murmured a polite excuse about needing to check on something for Martha and extricated myself from the circle of Chloe's self-aggrandizement. I walked away not with a storm in my heart, but with a profound and weary calm. The sting of her words had long since lost its power, replaced by a sense of observing a play where I was the only one in the room who already read the final act. I found a quiet corner on the far side of the porch, partially hidden by a large potted fern, and looked out at the party. I watched Chloe, now animatedly telling a story that involved her supposedly saving $1 million ad campaign, and my mind drifted back to the origins of my own, much quieter story. My tinkering, as Chloe called it, had begun 10 years ago in a cramped second-floor apartment that constantly smelled like burnt coffee and ozone from an overworked laptop. It wasn't a hobby. It was an obsession. I had been working as a user experience designer for a soul-crushing software company whose products were powerful but agonizingly ugly and difficult to use. My passion wasn't just making things pretty, it was about making technology feel human, intuitive. The idea that sparked it all came to me at 3 a.m, a sudden, blinding flash of insight. A new kind of design framework, a digital grammar that could make any software, no matter how complex, feel as natural to use as reading a book. I named it Emberlight. I poured every penny of my savings into it, quitting my stable job in an act that my own parents had called unthinkably reckless. The first 2 years were a blur of 18-hour days and sleepless nights. My apartment walls were a chaotic mural of whiteboards covered in flowcharts and sticky notes. The floor was a treacherous maze of cables. My diet consisted of whatever could be ordered online and eaten with one hand while the other was on a keyboard. It was a lonely, terrifying, and exhilarating time. My only constant was Mark. He wasn't my husband then, just my fiercely supportive boyfriend. He never once questioned my dream. He was the one who would show up at my door at midnight with takeout, not asking when I would be done, but simply sitting with me while I worked. His quiet presence, a silent testament of his faith in me. I remember one night sobbing with frustration after a potential investor had laughed me out of his office, calling my idea arts and crafts, not a business. Mark had simply held me and said, "His loss. He doesn't see what I see." His belief was the fuel that kept embers of my ambition glowing when my own hope ran low. Emberlight's breakthrough didn't come from a big venture capital firm. It came from a small, underfunded literacy nonprofit. They needed a new app to help dyslexic children learn to read, but couldn't afford to hire a design agency. I spent 3 months working with them for free, using their project as the first real-world test for my Emberlight framework. The app we built was beautiful, simple, and incredibly effective. 6 months later, it won a prestigious tech award for innovation in education. Suddenly, the investors who had ignored my emails were calling me. The next 5 years were a whirlwind of growth. The cramped apartment gave way to a small shared office space, then to our own floor in a downtown building. I hired a team of brilliant, passionate designers and engineers who shared my vision. Emberlight wasn't just a product anymore. It was a company, a culture. But I made a deliberate choice. I hired a charismatic CEO to be the public face of the company, while I remained behind the scenes as the chief product officer and majority owner. I didn't want the fame. I wanted the freedom to create. The offer from Innovate Solutions came as a surprise. They were a larger, more established tech giant, the very company where Chloe now worked, but they were struggling. Their products were clunky, their brand was stale. They saw Emberlight not just as an acquisition, but as a lifeline. The negotiation process was long and arduous. They offered me a sum of money that was truly life-altering, but I held out for something more important. I told them I wouldn't sell unless I was given the authority to ensure my framework was implemented correctly. I didn't just want my company's technology. I wanted its soul to be integrated into theirs. The board, desperate for a new direction, eventually agreed to my audacious terms. They didn't just buy Emberlight. They appointed me, Anna Reed, as the incoming CEO of the entire combined company, tasking me with steering the ship through the merger and into the future. The deal had been signed under the strictest non-disclosure agreements. For the past 2 months, I had been working quietly with the board and top-level executives to plan the transition. The official announcement to the company's employees, including a certain mid-level marketing manager named Chloe, was scheduled for a company-wide town hall meeting in 2 weeks. I took a slow sip of my lemonade, the cold glass a stark contrast to the burning irony of the situation. I looked back at the party. Chloe was now complaining to my mother-in-law about how much work the merger was creating for her marketing department. She spoke with the authority of someone on the inside, someone in the know. She had no idea she was speaking to the mother of the woman who had architected the entire deal. She saw me as an outsider, a simple, ambitionless nobody. The truth was, I wasn't just on the inside, I was the inside. Her entire professional world, the one she lorded over me, was now contained within mine. And as I watched her laugh, basking in the glow of her family's admiration, I felt a strange sense of peace. The performance was almost over. The final act was about to begin. I stayed in my quiet corner of the porch for a long time, watching the party from a distance. I watched my husband, Mark, gracefully navigate conversations, always subtly steering them away from any topic that might lead back to me. He was my protector, my gentle guardian against the casual cruelties of his own family. But as I watched him, a new, unfamiliar feeling began to root in my heart. It wasn't anger at Chloe anymore. It was a deep, profound weariness of my own silence. My desire for privacy, which had started as a shield to protect my work, had slowly, insidiously become a cage. A cage that allowed others like Chloe to define me. Just as I was about to rejoin the party, my quiet solitude was broken. It was Chloe. She had evidently exhausted her audience outside and had come looking for a new one, or perhaps for a fresh target to reaffirm her own fragile sense of superiority. She held 2 glasses of wine, offering one to me with a saccharine smile. "Hiding back here all by yourself, Anna?" she chimed, her voice bright and brittle. "I was just telling everyone about the Innovate Solutions Family and Friends summer picnic next weekend. It's a huge deal. They rent out the entire botanical gardens. There's catering, live music. They even have a whole section for an executive meet and greet. It's a major networking event, even though it's supposed to be casual." I took the glass, murmuring a thank you. "It sounds very nice." "It is," she said, leaning against the railing beside me, her eyes scanning the crowd as if she were a queen surveying her subjects. "It's one of the perks of working for a real, successful company. They invest in their culture. They invest in their people." She took a dramatic sip of her wine. "You know, you and Mark should come. As my guests, of course." The offer hung in the air, coated in a thick layer of condescension. It wasn't an invitation, it was a challenge. A chance for her to parade me through her professional territory, to showcase me as her quaint employment sister-in-law. "It would be good for you to get out," she continued, her voice softening into a tone of faux concern that was far more insulting than her overt bragging. "You could see what a place like Innovate is really like. It might be inspiring for you, give you some ideas for your little projects." In that moment, something within me clicked into place. All the years of biting my tongue, of smiling politely, of allowing her to paint her own narrative at my expense, it all came to a head. I looked at her perfectly manicured nails, her expensive dress, the desperate need for validation swimming in her eyes, and I saw her not as a monster, but as a deeply insecure person whose entire self-worth was tied to her job title at a company she knew nothing about. And I realized that avoiding her, hiding from these situations, was a form of surrender. It was allowing her version of the world to be the only one on display. It was letting her win. My desire for privacy had become an accidental accomplice to her cruelty. My decision was not a sudden angry declaration. It was a quiet internal shift, a realignment of my own priorities. I was tired of living in a cage, no matter how comfortable or well-intentioned. The company picnic wasn't her territory. It was, in the most literal sense, mine. I wasn't planning a grand theatrical revenge. The theatrics, I decided, could belong to Chloe. My plan was far simpler. I was just going to show up. I was going to exist, as myself, in my own space. The consequences of that simple act would be their own reward. "Thank you, Chloe," I said, my voice even and surprisingly light. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. Mark and I would love to come." The genuine surprise on her face was a small, satisfying victory in itself. She had expected me to demur, to make an excuse. My easy acceptance threw her off script. She quickly recovered, a smug smile returning to her face, clearly interpreting my agreement as a sign of her own persuasive power. "Great," she said. "I'll forward you the details. Just try to dress the part, okay?" On the car ride home, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Mark was fuming. "I cannot believe she said that to you, Anna. Inspiring for you. The nerve. We are not going to that picnic. I'll tell her we have other plans. I'm done. I'm drawing a line." I let him vent, his anger a warm, protective blanket. When he was finished, I reached over and placed my hand on his. "Actually," I said, calmly, "I told her we would go." He glanced at me, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What? Why? You don't have to put yourself through that." "I know, but I think I want to. We can't spend our lives building walls to keep Chloe out, Mark. It's exhausting. Let's just go. We'll eat some free food, listen to some music. We'll just have a nice day out. No drama, no fighting." He searched my face, looking for any sign of distress or reluctance. He found none. All he saw was a quiet, unshakable resolve he hadn't seen before. He saw that I wasn't being forced into a decision. I was making a choice. He squeezed my hand, his own anger subsiding, replaced by his unwavering trust in me. "Okay," he said softly. "If you're sure, we'll go." I turned to look out the window at the passing city lights. The Innovate Solutions tower, a familiar silhouette on the skyline, slid past. Chloe's little kingdom. She thought she was inviting me into her world, but the truth was, I was about to welcome her into mine. The stage was set, the invitations were sent, and the star of the show had no idea her role was about to change. The Innovate Solutions Family and Friends summer picnic was every bit as extravagant as Chloe had described. It was held in the sprawling, manicured grounds of the city's botanical gardens, a private oasis of green lawns and vibrant flower beds. A massive banner proclaiming the company's logo was strung between two ancient oak trees, and the air was filled with the sounds of a live jazz band, the cheerful shouts of children playing, and the general murmur of hundreds of conversations. It was a carefully orchestrated display of corporate success and employee morale. As Mark and I walked through the entrance, I felt a strange and unsettling sense of dual ownership and anonymity. Every smiling employee, every happy family was now, in a way, my responsibility, and not a single one of them knew my name. We found a relatively quiet spot under the shade of a large magnolia tree, spreading out a blanket and simply taking in the scene. Mark, ever my protector, had positioned us away from the main thoroughfares, hoping to delay the inevitable encounter with Chloe. For an hour, we existed in a peaceful bubble. We ate catered food that was surprisingly delicious. We listened to the music, and we talked about everything and nothing. I watched the employees of my new company, observing the dynamics, listening to the snippets of conversation. I saw the engineering teams engaged in a fiercely competitive game of volleyball, and the sales teams gathered near the bar, their laughter the loudest in the park. It felt like I was an anthropologist, studying the culture of a newly discovered tribe I was about to lead. Our bubble was eventually and inevitably burst by Chloe. She spotted us from across the lawn and marched over with the determination of a heat-seeking missile. She wore a company-branded polo shirt tucked neatly into tailored shorts, a name tag with Chloe Reed Marketing gleaming on her chest. "There you are," she exclaimed, her voice a little too loud. "I was wondering where you two were hiding. You're missing everything." She didn't wait for a response, instead grabbing my hand and pulling me to my feet. "Come on, I'll give you the grand tour." For the next 30 minutes, we were dragged through Chloe's personal kingdom. She paraded us past her colleagues, introducing Mark with pride and me with a dismissive wave. "This is my brother Mark, and this is his wife Anna." The unspoken addendum hung in the air every single time. She pointed out the different departmental tents, as if they were exhibits in a zoo. That's the data science pavilion over there. Super technical, all numbers and algorithms. You wouldn't find it interesting at all, Anna. Her tour culminated in front of a large white marquee tent set off from the main area by velvet ropes. Inside, a quieter, more exclusive gathering was taking place. And that, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, is the executive lounge, the C-suite. My boss, Mr. Davies, the senior VP of global marketing, is in there. This is where the real magic happens. She puffed out her chest. He and I are working very closely on the Emberlight merger integration. It's a huge project. The irony was so thick, I could barely breathe. She was bragging about her minor role in a project I had architected from the highest possible level. Just as I was about to suggest we head back to our blanket, Chloe's eyes lit up. "Oh my God, there he is," she whispered excitedly. A distinguished man with silver hair and a warm smile, Mr. Davies, had just stepped out of the tent. "Okay, stay right here. Be normal." She practically ran over to him, her posture shifting into one of sycophantic eagerness. "Mr. Davies, so wonderful to see you enjoying the day." She then gestured grandly back towards us. "I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to my family. This is my brother Mark and his wife Anna." Mr. Davies turned and smiled politely. He shook Mark's hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Mark." Then his eyes fell on me. The change was instantaneous and total. The casual, friendly smile on his face vanished, replaced by a look of wide-eyed, profound shock. His posture straightened, the easygoing boss disappeared, and a top-level executive standing before his ultimate superior took his place. He seemed to momentarily forget how to speak. "Anna," he finally stammered, his voice a full octave higher than before. He quickly corrected himself. "I mean, Ms. Reed, good afternoon. I had no idea you were planning to attend. It's a true honor to see you here. I hope everything is to your satisfaction. Is there anything you need?" Chloe stared, her head cocked like a confused puppy. Her perfectly constructed social world was beginning to fracture. "Oh," she said with a nervous laugh, trying to reclaim control of the situation. "You two know each other?" Mr. Davies looked at Chloe as if she had lost her mind. His own confusion was now directed at her inexplicable familiarity with the new head of the company. "Know her?" he repeated, his brow furrowed. He looked back at me, then at Chloe's proud name tag, and the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place with an audible gasp. He turned to Chloe, his professional smile now gone, replaced by a look of utter gravity. "Chloe," he said, his voice slow and deliberate, as if explaining a very simple concept to a child. "Anna is Reed." He paused, letting the name hang in the air before delivering the final, world-altering blow. "Anna is the founder and visionary behind Emberlight. As of the completion of the merger, she is the new CEO of Innovate Solutions. All of us," he made a sweeping gesture that included himself, the tent behind him, and the entire picnic, report to her now. Time seemed to stop. The cheerful music from the band, the laughter of children, the distant chatter, all faded into a dull, humming void. All I could see was Chloe's face. The confident, condescending smile she had worn all day froze, then cracked, then crumbled into a mask of pure, silent horror. Her vibrant color drained from her cheeks, leaving behind a pale, waxy sheen. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, darted from the terrified face of her boss to my own calm, neutral expression. In that single horrifying moment of clarity, I could see her replaying every single condescending remark, every pitying smile, every dismissive gesture she had ever directed at me. She hadn't just been making fun of her quiet sister-in-law. She had been publicly, repeatedly, and enthusiastically mocking her own CEO. I simply offered a polite smile to her boss. "Please, Mr. Davies, call me Anna," I said, my voice calm and steady. "It's a lovely event. You and your team have done a wonderful job." The silence that followed Mr. Davies' announcement was the most profound I have ever experienced. It was a vacuum, sucking all the cheerful noise from the picnic into a black hole of pure, unadulterated shock. Chloe stood frozen, a statue of mortification. Her boss, Mr. Davies, looked like a man who had accidentally stumbled into a lion's den and was desperately trying not to make any sudden movements. The colleagues who had been standing nearby, witnessing Chloe's casual cruelty just moments before, now stared at their shoes, at the sky, at anything other than the horrifyingly awkward scene unfolding before them. I knew in that moment that my response would define my leadership more than any memo or meeting ever could. I gave Mr. Davies a small, reassuring smile, deliberately breaking the tension. "Thank you, Mr. Davies," I said, my voice calm and even. "I appreciate the warm welcome. I wanted to see the company culture firsthand, and I have to say, your team has put on a truly wonderful event. The live music is a fantastic touch." My words, so normal and professional, were a lifeline. Mr. Davies seized it, launching into a slightly too enthusiastic explanation of the vendor he'd chosen for the catering. I listened patiently, asking a few pertinent questions about employee feedback initiatives. I did not look at Chloe. I did not acknowledge her presence. I acted as any new CEO would, engaging with a senior executive. And in doing so, I made her more invisible than she had ever tried to make me. My complete and utter dismissal of her personal meltdown was a more powerful statement than any angry retort could ever be. After a few excruciatingly long minutes, Chloe made a small, strangled sound and muttered something about needing to use the restroom before practically fleeing, her face a blotchy, tear-streaked mess. The small crowd that had been trapped by the drama dissipated instantly, whispering amongst themselves as they scurried away. The rest of the picnic was a study in shifted realities. The news spread through the event with the speed of a digital virus. Within the hour, there wasn't a person there who didn't know the identity of the quiet woman in the simple summer dress sitting under the magnolia tree. The deference was immediate. Executives I had only ever met on video calls came over to introduce themselves formally, their handshakes firm, their eyes full of a newfound, cautious respect. Mark, my dear Mark, was trying his absolute best not to laugh. He sat beside me on the blanket, a huge grin plastered on his face. "So," he whispered as a vice president of operations walked away, "that was something." "It was bound to happen eventually," I said, taking a bite of a strawberry. "The look on her face, Anna," he said, shaking his head in wonder. "I almost feel sorry for her." "Almost," I agreed, and we shared a small, secret smile. The true reckoning, however, came not at the picnic, but on Tuesday morning. I received a meeting request from Chloe. The subject line simply read, "Quick chat." I accepted. She entered my new corner office, an office far larger and with a much better view than Mr. Davies, like a prisoner walking to her own execution. She was pale and her hands were trembling. She stood before my desk, refusing to sit. "Anna," she began, her voice barely a whisper. She corrected herself. "Miss Reed, I am so sorry. I don't know what to say. I had no idea. I was just joking around. You know how families are. It was just teasing. I am so sorry." Her apology was a frantic, pathetic scramble for survival. She wasn't sorry for the years of casual cruelty, for making me feel small, for her relentless judgment. She was sorry she had been caught. She was terrified of losing the job that formed the very bedrock of her identity. I listened patiently until she was finished. I didn't offer her comfort. I didn't offer her forgiveness. I offered her professionalism. "Chloe," I said, my voice neutral and calm, "please sit down." She perched nervously on the edge of a chair. "I appreciate you coming to speak with me. Let me be perfectly clear so there are no misunderstandings going forward. Our family relationship and our professional relationship are now two entirely separate things. Here, in this building, you are a marketing manager and I am the CEO. Your future at Innovate Solutions will be determined by the exact same criteria as every other employee: the quality of your work, the results you deliver, and the professionalism you demonstrate. Nothing else. Is that understood? Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded mutely. She understood. She was not being fired. She was being given a far worse sentence. She was trapped. Her career, her ambition, her entire sense of self-worth was now completely and totally at my mercy. And my mercy would be dictated by merit, a concept she had never once applied to me. The final shift occurred at the next family dinner. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Chloe was silent, her eyes fixed on her plate, speaking only when spoken to. But the most interesting change came from the rest of the family. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, they now looked at me with a new curiosity. They asked about my work, not as a hobby, but with genuine interest. They asked for my opinion on the stock market, on new technologies. The family's center of gravity had permanently shifted. I had not changed at all, but their perception of me had been completely remade. I didn't revel in Chloe's humiliation or my newfound status. The victory wasn't in her defeat. The real vindication was the quiet, profound sense of freedom, the freedom to simply be myself in every context, without apology. Chloe's cruelty, I realized, was never really about me. It was a reflection of her own deep-seated insecurities. My success didn't diminish her. Her own fear of being diminished did. I had spent years in a cage of my own making, hiding my success to keep the peace. But peace at the cost of self-respect is no peace at all. The most effective power isn't the kind you have to flaunt. It's the kind you hold in reserve. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are, no matter what anyone else thinks. A truly satisfying story about the danger of underestimation. What do you think Chloe will do now? Let us know your predictions in the comments below. If you loved watching karma being served, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more daily revenge stories. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss a single upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.